Well, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Thank you so much for downloading the Faith Life podcast of Discovery Fellowship Church. I'm your host, Pastor Nathan, here with my co-host, Pastor Matt.
Hey, guys.
And joining us in the studio today, we have a very special guest, my lovely wife, Alexis. Lex, how are you doing today?
I'm great.
Now, see, what's weird is the way that we're sitting is I want to, address you.
Crane your neck.
Crane my neck over. So if you're watching the video version of it, this will be a fun one because I'm going like that a lot. Now, if you're only listening to the audio, you're missing out. So check us out on YouTube and leave us a comment. Let us know if you like this setup for guests or if we should try something different. As always, if you haven't done so already, please take a minute, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you have downloaded this episode. And if it was on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe. And don't forget, you too can be a part of the conversation by emailing podcast@dfchurch.com. That's podcast@dfchurch.com. And we will get to your letters and our listener mail segment. Now, Matt, speaking of listener mail,
Yes.
there was something that we were going to do today on the podcast.
Yeah.
And I don't think we have all the stuff here ready for
No, so we'll do it for next week as kind of like a post-Thanksgiving celebration, a feast, if you might. So you'll have to listen to next week to figure out what we're talking about.
That one might be one you want to watch because I'm expecting our faces to communicate things that maybe audio alone does not.
Yep.
Well, before we dive into our main topic of today, as always, let's go to the news, see what is happening in the world around us. The first thing I saw is this headline. It says, "From toy to tool, Dolly is a wake-up call for visual artists and the rest of us." Now, Dolly 3, for those of you who don't know what Dolly is, DALL-E.
It's Wally's cousin.
It's Wally's cousin. No, that was, there was the little one named Mo.
Oh, Mo.
Oh,
Who would like clean?
yeah.
Mo. Yep. They're like Pokemon. They just say their names. Wally.
So Dolly.
Dolly's cousin. In fact, it's an AI image generator.
Yes.
And what's really crazy is how good, and at some point in the past we talked about this when it was still in preview and it hadn't come out yet. But the idea is it's an AI image generation, which continues to just improve. And one of the big things with this new one is that it's really good at doing text, for instance.
Right.
Which is a lot of AI image generation in the past was actually pretty bad at doing text.
Yeah, text and fingers were always like the worst parts.
Right. So as they continue to get better, and again, we're not that far into it, and it's just getting better and better. This is the continued conversation we're going to have as fake image generation specifically continues to improve. What does that do to us in our world, in our culture, and the way we react to things? And a corollary story to this, that this was like the cool side of it. So I saw somebody using the new Oculus Quest 3. Now, the big thing with the Oculus Quest 3 is that it's got a full color pass-through mode, which means you can just put it on, click a button, and just see your room perfectly how it is, and just walk around, right? But then the VR part can put stuff on. So, like, if you want just a big screen to watch Netflix on while you're in your kitchen, you can just say bloop, and it's there, and then you're cooking, and you just got to stab.
I'm sorry, you say bloop and that's how it happens?
Yeah, you have to say bloop.
Okay.
No,
So make sure I got that right.
it does cool stuff. Like, there's this one game where it's like, you're in your house and it scans it and says, okay, there's windows here, here, there. And it makes it look like zombies are actually climbing in through your own windows and you're shooting them.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Augments reality all around you.
Weird.
It's really weird. It's really cool. But this is where it's going to tie in. I saw a video of a guy who was using it in conjunction with ChatGPT 3, which integrates with DALL-E 3. And all these other things it's multimodal processing. And so what he can do, walk up to his fridge while we're in his Oculus, open it up and say, ChatGPT, what are some recipes I could make? And it can look at everything in his fridge and just figure it out what's in there and give him recipes based on those ingredients.
That's incredible.
Isn't that you can even do that without the Oculus, but you can hold your phone up and do that if you've got the full ChatGPT 4, which you can sponsor us and we can do that. We can take a picture of the fridge here at church and figure out recipes. But That's where it got into a multimodal input where it can synthesize not just text prompts, but image prompts and decipher them.
I actually really want someone to give us ChatGPT 4 just so we can go to our fridge here at the church, because what can you make with a moldy orange, an expired Pepsi, and a 4-year-old bottle of French's mustard?
I was going to say French's mustard.
Yeah.
We have a bottle in every fridge, it feels like.
Yeah, it's so weird.
For every picnic. You got to have a lot.
Every fridge, every pick.
Right, but we buy new mustard every picnic.
Because that's stuff is bad. Picnic mustard.
Oh, yeah.
Stuff is bad.
Yeah.
I knew stuff.
Yeah.
We don't throw the old
When
yeah.
it's new, it's bad. You have to go
Oh,
for the
that's
spicy
true.
stuff.
Oh.
Come on.
Yeah, see, Matt hates mustard, and I would agree when it was yellow mustard, but I don't agree with spicy brown.
Yeah.
I love spicy brown. What kind of mustard do you like?
It's a weird question.
I don't know how we went from AI to mustard, but what do you guys think? So the downside, the scariness of image generation, but the upside, is it an upside of an AI assistant? Eventually, here's what we're going to get to. It's going to be embedded in your brain.
Mm-hmm.
And so you don't even have to do anything other than look at your cabinet and say, what can I make tonight?
You really think that we're going to get to that point where we have it embedded in our brain?
I actually do.
I hope not. Lord, come quickly.
That's what I'm saying. He's going to come quickly, and we're not going to be human anymore.
Yeah, we are. Because genetically, we're very different than we were even 2,000 years ago. Like, look at the way wisdom teeth don't fit our mouth when they used to, stuff like that. We're not human, quote unquote, in a lot of ways. If
You heard it here first, folks. Nathan is not human.
I only had one wisdom tooth.
There you go.
Wisdom teeth is what qualifies you as human or not.
Right.
Well, what I'm saying is genetically, we're a lot different even in the past couple thousand years than we've been.
But this would be integrating something that is completely non-human
Right.
and
Like-
man-made.
If a guy has a
Man.
fake leg, is he no longer human?
That part of him isn't.
Yeah, his peg leg is
But he's
part pirate.
So that's what I'm saying. The robot in your brain is not human, but that doesn't change you from it. It just means you've got an extra piece of technology attached to you.
He's going to be the first one, guys.
Here's my suggestion.
Probably would. I would sign up. If they were like, hey, do you want to sign up for Brain AI? I'd be like, sure.
We should do a different episode all about the ethical concerns of AI in my brain.
I think a lot of people would tune into that.
Yeah,
Actually, so here's
I would.
the subject on that would actually you could go almost a little bit bigger. It would be called transhumanism, right? Which is modification of a human to become something more than human. There's a really interesting fictional book. I'll just say this and then we can move on. That talks about this in a fiction story. It's called Down and Out in the Magic Kingdom.
Right.
And it's in the future in which humans are completely augmented to be everything. Like nobody, even if you die, your consciousness is recorded daily. And so they just grow a new body for you. And the next day you just wake up again with whatever the last memory recording was. So you won't maybe remember. Like the whole premise of the book is it's in Disneyland and there's all the stuff about technology versus traditionalism. And this guy gets killed. And so the next day he wakes up and, his memory only goes up to a certain point. So he has to try to solve his own murder. It's a weird book.
Do we have that? That sounds awesome.
It's really good. I got it from the library when I read it, but it might be worth picking up. Down and Out in the Magic Kingdom.
Down and Out.
Link it up in the comments.
Maybe. I mean, it's not a Christian book, so be forewarned that there's some subject matter that you might not like if you read it. But it's
Colorful content.
So
if you
not
will.
technically recommended.
recommend it if you want an interesting look at this transhumanism debate, which we'll put on the calendar as a full episode because that sounds fascinating. Did either of you have any other news you wanted to share before we jump into our main topic?
I did, but not anymore.
Gosh, that sounds like it would have been cool.
No, I was just going to talk about how Loveland now has In-N-Out. And so to celebrate every day this week, I've worn a different In-N-Out t-shirt. Today I'm wearing one from California. Yesterday was Vegas. The day before was Colorado. We got some Utah action. Utah. And then I was also going to mention this, less serious than yours, right? For the youth sports fans out there, the Oakland Athletics, as of 8 a.m. on Thursday, the 16th, they have officially been approved to move out of Oakland Athletics, to Las Vegas.
So they're going to be called the Las Vegas Athletics?
Probably, but the Raiders recently moved out of Oakland to Las Vegas, because Oakland has done a terrible job of like managing their pro sports teams and haven't been like investing in them. And so they're like, fine, we'll go somewhere where they will invest in us. And so Vegas is now really like they have hockey, soccer, football, and now they'll have baseball. So they have the 4 sports. I think they have soccer.
There's only 4 sports.
Main ones.
Perfect.
Oh, basketball. Sorry, I missed the 5th.
What?
They don't have that yet. I don't.
What's going to happen? Are we going to have the Broncos move out?
Of Colorado?
Yeah. Wouldn't that be funny?
No, too many people love the Broncos.
But aren't they terrible?
Yeah, but that's not the fans' fault.
Right, but this wasn't the fans' fault. Didn't the Oakland people have fans?
Fans stopped showing up to games because they hated like the ownership also.
Right, so we could get to that point.
We could get to that point, yeah. Rockies might be coming soon because the Rockies have been terrible and ownership has been stinky.
I thought they were good. No, it was the Nuggets.
20 years ago.
It was the Nuggets.
Yeah, the Nuggets are
None of our teams are good. I know that.
No, Nuggets are great. Avalanche are fantastic. Yeah.
I used to go
Yep.
to those games, and they were so much fun.
Yeah, no, we've just had some bad baseball and football lately here in Colorado.
Well, speaking of how I feel about sports, let's jump into our main topic.
Segue of the year, friends.
Today we're going to be talking about apathy in our culture.
10 out of 10.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah, pretty good. Well, I wanted us to talk a little bit about, and Lex and I were talking about this, and I was like, man, this is some really good stuff. Let's have her on the podcast with us today because she's got some good thoughts on this topic. But really, it's this interesting shift in our culture. I'll just kind of open it up, and then both of you feel free to jump in. This kind of interesting shift in our culture where we've moved in maybe 20 years ago, you had like the angry atheist revolution, if you want to call it that, where you had the quote unquote 4 horsemen of the atheist apocalypse, right? You had Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, Daniel Dennett, and
The 4th one.
the 4th one, which is actually kind of my point, is this was this huge movement where atheism took a big step up, and everybody, like, you had this whole idea of like, I want to identify as an atheist, which was kind of a new thing, not really done before. And it seemed like it was just picking up steam, picking up momentum. And we had increasingly like, not just I just, don't really believe in anything, but like I'm against God.
Sam Harris is
Sam Harris. Thank you. And as that picked up steam, it looked like that's maybe a pretty sizable shift in culture. But 20 years later, that's actually kind of fallen off. That's that you don't really hear those names referenced. That's not really a position that takes the center stage to the point that it did in the past. But it hasn't shifted back towards just a full-on acceptance and love of God.
Right.
To me, what it seems like we see in our culture is just apathy. It's not even like I don't want to prove that God doesn't exist. It's just
I just don't care.
if God exists one way or another. And so that makes it really hard from like a share our faith point of view. Because if somebody is like, I don't believe God exists at all, that's a good starting point because they've thought about this issue. We can start to debate their reasoning and their ideas behind it. And you can kind of get down to it. You can have a discussion because at least they're interested in the topic of God. Whereas somebody who says, well, I don't really care one way or another if God exists. How do you even start the conversation? So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. It's just the general apathy I see in our culture towards God. And then maybe we could touch a little bit on how that apathy is also starting to manifest within the church.
Right. And I think that's a big deal
as well.
Yeah. Because we have, especially in the last several years, a great growth of apathy for people who claim to be Christians and go to church regularly. And so, the question is, are we being influenced by the apathy of non-believers in our culture? Or is there something else going on?
Mm-hmm.
So dictionary.com, I looked up apathy just to give us a definition of what, like, at least the worldly definition for apathy is. And I really like it. It's the absence of or suppression of passion, emotion, or excitement. It's a lack of interest in or concern for things that others might find moving or exciting. So this idea of like, sometimes it's not just the absence of that excitement and passion, but it's the suppression of it.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
I would have never defined it with suppression. I think. Yeah.
Like actually stopping the feeling.
I'm stopping it from happening because of other things going on potentially, right?
I think what you said, Matt, too, I mean, we see it in both. Like within the church, we have deconstruction happening.
Mhm.
And then outside of the church, you just have this general sense of, I don't care if God exists, right? Because you said, or is something else going on? I think it's everywhere.
Right.
But
I think so. Maybe we'll break it down. We'll talk about what is causing it in our culture and then what it's seeping into the church. Real quick on the church part, what it just made me think of. So, like, when we look at, like, maybe it's like, well, you don't have people who are volunteering or going to church regularly or some of these other things that we might have associated with, like, excitement towards God. But then it made me think, as you read that definition, like, people who are in the church but don't have any passion for God. It's like, they're just like, whatever, I'm here. Or
I'm going through the motions.
I'm not excited about what God is doing in my life, or I'm not excited about learning more about Him, or I'm not excited about how I can serve others in this community, or I'm not excited about how I can worship it. Like, those are ways that apathy might have hit our church, not our church necessarily,
the church.
The church, that when I think apathy, I don't know if my mind immediately goes to that, but with your definition, that's where my mind went. Let's back it up. Let's talk about our culture. Why do you guys think apathy has become what it is in our culture? Like, where is that coming from? Why is that a thing?
Yeah, so I was reading in 2 Corinthians 4 this morning, and it talks about how there's this veil that's over the people. And it talks about the light and darkness again, which is echoed again in John. And I just love how scripture works together and God brings all of that stuff to mind. But I think it feels like a spiritual blanket over everything. And I've heard some people describe it as like we're being lulled to sleep, which then led me to Ephesians 5 when it talks about wake up, O sleeper, rise from the dead so Christ will shine on you. And I think, Matt, you could probably speak to this. You love preaching on Ephesians and whatnot. But I think it's talking about our spiritual state, but I think the spiritual state of everyone everywhere right now, because we're super post-Christian, is like we're just constantly fighting being lulled to sleep.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. Time Magazine actually put out a article. Let me get to it real quick. And the headline is, it's harder than ever to care about anything.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Right. And this is post-pandemic world we live in, right? Where like over the last 3 years, people have just cared less and less about things that they used to care about. Now, there's a number of reasons why that might be true, right? One, we reprioritize. Like that would be the ideal situation. I don't care about this as much because I prioritize something more important.
Like you still care about something.
Right. I still care about something.
Right.
But it seems like more and more that title, care about anything, is what like caught my attention with it, because we now are just in this culture where it's like, I don't even care. Like it doesn't really matter.
Hey. So moment of realness. Have you guys experienced that? We're both pastors and we're all leaders at church and whatnot.
Yeah. Like in our lives.
Kind of just like not caring about anything.
It can be definitely something that creeps in, and I definitely have found days where it's just like, I don't want to, I don't care about anything right now. Like, it's almost like a what's the point?
Right.
And to me, it makes me think, is the problem misplaced priorities, which then let us down? And what I mean by that is our culture continually, like we're a culture and a time that has more comfort and luxury, free time. Like, we have so much ease of everything, more than probably any point in history, in terms of like, we have computers we just carry around with us on our person that can access the vast sum of all human knowledge. And we can like pull up a thing, get food sent to us, watch a funny video, like everything we can do. We live basically unheard of luxury.
Yeah.
And so with that, I think it's showing the emptiness of those things to actually be meaningful or fulfilling in our lives. And so as we continue to get further and further into this idea of like relying on stuff to define us or to give our life meaning, the more that lets us down, the more it makes it hard to care about anything. That's that's a theory, at least, where maybe some of this springs from.
And I think a lot of it also is the whole, like, isolation that's happened over the last few years has led to this also, right? Because of that isolation and that alienation, that sense of like aloneness, depression is at higher rates than ever. Now we're recording things better than ever, but it does seem like more and more people are struggling with that depression and that loneliness and that sense of where nobody really cares and nothing really matters. But that's because for a couple of years, we weren't like, and I hate wording this way, but like we weren't allowed to care for each other and actually have those relationships. Like God wired us to be in a relationship with each other. Right. And when you remove God's design from where you're placing priorities, it's going to lead to that apathy. Like everything's meaningless right at that point. Like we get to just the deep sorrow of like, well, what's the point of anything when we remove the way we were wired for relationship with each other?
And we were shown that it works.
And we were shown that
we all got super comfortable just being at home and doing our own thing. And I think too, you guys both said something earlier that sparked this. It's really, if we're apathetic, whether that's a lack of caring for others altogether or we're suppressing caring for others, it's a failure to love God and love people. And if we love the Lord with all of our heart, mind, soul, and strength, that's going to, the commandment there then is to love others the same way and make disciples. And people learn who Jesus is through the way that we love, right? And so that's a conscious choice. And I think the pull that we're feeling inside the church and everywhere else is that it's easier to just not care. It's easier to disengage. So is it laziness then? If it's a conscious choice?
Because it's just easier sometimes. Or is it, we've seen how sometimes relationships can, again, fail us. They don't ultimately provide the fulfillment that we would want from them. And so it's easier to just not try. I also wonder, Matt, you were kind of talking about this, and it's all kind of bundled together. The almost, I guess, ironic state of it in that we are more connected than we've ever been before in terms of the ability to talk and communicate with people with digital tools now, and yet we are more isolated before. And I think part of that is because a lot of times with our digital connection, which I'm not going to downplay as a real thing, because I think we have gotten to a point where we connect with people in more than just, in a lot of more complex ways, right? Like we all have relationship face-to-face. We're sitting here in person, but we also connect digitally across digital mediums as well. It doesn't have to be one or the other. And so I'm not saying that the problem is digital connection. What I do wonder on a broad scale with things like social media and this kind of digital connection we have is that people tend to highly sanitize the version of themselves that they put out digitally. Like you're only sharing the best of the best and like the best lighting or the best, framing of this picture or the really cool thing you did, right? You're not on there being like, here's why today was rough and here's why all these bad things. Like you're almost putting your best face forward. And so...
And then if you do post stuff like that, people are like, ugh.
Right. And so what?
Stay away from them.
The effect that has, and I think this is one of the reasons why social media is so detrimental in younger people, especially if unchecked, is it gives you this view that everybody else is perfect. And so when you have a problem, it's like, I must be the only one who struggles. And so that leads to that isolation and that disillusionment and this idea of, well, I shouldn't care either, because you're seeing this sanitized version of the rest of the world that doesn't comport with your own experience. It just creates that disconnect. And so I wonder if that leads a little bit into, again, just why should I even care?
Right.
Because nothing's real anyway.
Right. Yeah, I think that there's a lot that I think plays into this, right? You also have this idea of like this broken kind of rhythms, if you will, that have happened. Okay. That like if you're doing something every week and then you miss a week and you're like, oh, it wasn't that big of a deal, I missed that week, it becomes easier for me to miss it again next time and miss it again next time, then become lazy with it, which the Bible screams against, right? Against laziness. And so once I start to fall into that trap, honestly, like I'm going to put apathy with laziness and kind of lump those together and say it's sin. Like
Yeah.
either way we look at it, it's sin.
When we've been told to do something and we actively don't make a conscious choice to do it.
Right.
It's the same thing, I think, with encouragement. Like if I miss something in my rhythm, it means so much if someone else within the body of Christ is like, hey, Lex, we really missed you.
Right.
But if we don't care, and I think disillusionment was a good word for it too, where it's just like you just don't really believe in it anymore because maybe there wasn't a payoff, or I don't know.
Well, and then like if you miss something and I notice it, but I'm like, oh, she probably has her reasons. I don't need to say anything about it.
Right.
Right. And then like my heart starts to disconnect even more
Yeah.
from caring about you
Right.
being there or not.
Right.
And then so next time you miss, I maybe notice it, but don't think twice about it. And then the next time you miss, I probably don't even notice it because I've like slowly just disconnected.
Yeah. It's a good way to put it.
So what's the solution? What is as the church and as people who love God and are trying to look more like Jesus, what do we need to do? And we haven't even really talked about what it looks like in the church, although a lot of what we've talked about applies in the church. So those are the next two things. Like, A, how does this apathy manifest itself? Maybe lack of encouragement would be one way within the church. How else does it manifest? And then what can we as the church do about it?
Yeah. Like we need a fresh encounter with God.
Okay.
Right. Like we need to see him. We need to recognize his greatness, his goodness, like feel his presence. And I know like some of my more conservative brothers and sisters out there are gonna be like, Matt, you're sounding a little charismatic right now. But like God is real and he is with us. And I think what happens is I start to disconnect from him. And that's where my apathetic heart starts to grow. Right? Because I'm no longer looking for God in this moment. I'm no longer looking for God in the midst of my relationships with other people. And then I stop caring. And so like, honestly, church, if you want a revival from this apathy that you're probably feeling individually, you're probably collectively feeling as a church, because this is a nationwide thing. I looked up some stats and over 75% of pastors that were interviewed by Lifeway Research said that apathy is one of the biggest problems in their church right now. So this is unfortunately an epidemic of apathy. And I think the solution starts with us reconnecting with God, because God, as we grow in our relationship with him and our understanding of him and we connect with him, he's going to grow our heart like his for other people and for those relationships and actually care about the things that he cares about. But too often I ignore God. So I stop caring about the things he cares about. And then like, it's subtle and like it creeps in slowly. And then eventually months later, I look back, I'm like, oh, dang, where am I? Like, God, where have you been?
You? Yeah.
And really, it's not where has God been? It's where have I been? I'm the one that disconnected from him, and it's led to all this other garbage.
I think a good picture for it too is like the marriage relationship. Like Nath, you and I have talked about this one a lot. When you're in that relationship, everything in the beginning is new and exciting, and you're chasing after that person, and you're, I'm talking more about Jesus at this point, where at that point in my relationship with him, you're like on fire and you're learning, and there's apologetics and you know how to defend your faith, and you're talking to people, and it's just like this snowball effect, but then like any relationship, it's normal and healthy for that to change, right? Like it's not always like that, but then it grows into something different and deeper. And I think, Matt, what you mentioned about that fresh encounter with the Lord, it's really, I think we have that epidemic of over familiarity with him. Right. A lot of us have been raised in church. A lot of us are in churches where there is a lot of that faithfulness and that obedience, but it is kind of going through the motions. Like we come because this is what we do. And I heard a podcast maybe a month or so ago where the host said, if that is what we're up against, our prayer needs to be, God, defamiliarize myself with you. Show me something new about you. Help me to, the marriage relationship part, like fall in love with you again, like pursue me and get my heart right again. And so I think a big component of that is maybe we don't ask, we don't pray. How often do we talk to God alone in our room with the door shut? How many of us are so distracted and busy that we don't even have that time? I'm preaching to myself, right? Like get alone with the Lord and ask him, do I have anything in my heart that is a greater affection than you? And if there is something, show it to me, first of all, and then get rid of it. Like, I need a deeper affection for you.
It's a scary thing to ask for.
It is. A lot can happen. I think those big, scary prayers are the ones that moves, God's heart, and you're in connection and things happen, and then it gets really exciting again. But I kind of bring an uncomfortable truth this morning too on this topic. I think a huge part is not just the level of access we have to information, and seeing that apathy everywhere. It's idolatry, right? And I pulled up the definitions as well because words are awesome.
A lot of dictionary.com.
Yeah, we have a lot of that going on. So the biblical definition is the worship of someone or something other than God, as though it were God. But the Webster's one is interesting too. It says extreme admiration, love, or reverence for something or someone. And I think as far as apathy, guys, like in this time and culture, we have to be extremely careful, mindful, and like I mentioned, prayerful. Like, bring it to God. Do I have any idols? What do I have in my heart that's above you, Jesus? Like, smash it on the rock if you have to. Yeah. We live in a time where even our Christian friends say, it's okay. It's okay to love your house and your money and your stuff and to go for these things as your goals. And again, a lot of that is a little salty because it's a personal thing for me, and it might look different for you, but take it to God. Like, is there anything that's in that rightful place of worship? Because once we get that heart aligned, then we can be honest and encounter him again.
Yeah. I'm reminded of Philippians 3, which Pastor Rick just preached on in this Philippians series, where Paul talks about all of like his accomplishments. And he says, all of that is literal rubbish compared to the worth of knowing Christ. And so like my house, my car, my family, my job, my comfort, fill in the blank, my comfort is literal rubbish compared to knowing Christ. Now, the problem is I've tuned my heart towards my house, my car, my family, my job, my friends, and not towards my Christ.
And those things, I want to be clear, they're not bad. They're
bad
gifts
things
from God, and we should tell him thank you. But again, we have to be so careful, even inside the church, where just because someone says it's okay to have all these things or to love all these things or to have all these things on the calendar, be careful that it doesn't slip into idolatry.
Right. Yeah.
And I want to kind of back it up a little bit to something that you just said, Matt, a few minutes ago that you have sparked in my mind. This idea of, you said, I know I might start to sound a little charismatic here. And I think this kind of goes back to your original definition you pulled of like the suppression of passion.
Right.
And I think sometimes in the more conservative side, we've seen the abuses of over emotionalism. Right. Excuse me, where it's like we put so much, we say that what we feel is like true. And so we've seen people where they put more emphasis on feeling than like knowing who God is, right? Like the knowledge of God. And it's almost like there's this diametrically opposed thing of like emotions versus knowledge, right? Or like rationality versus emotion. And we've seen how this side has sometimes abused it, quote unquote, like the charismatic. That's where the quote unquote is. And so we lean so hard into this side that I think that to our detriment, push down the other side.
Right.
As opposed to saying, look, God has created both for specific purposes and for specific things for us to, experience. And emotion isn't bad. And feeling an emotional response to who God is isn't bad.
Right.
Doesn't that make you excited for heaven? There's not going to be sides. It'll just be the bride and the bridegroom. Right. And I wonder, too, if we could eliminate sides by going back to Scripture. Like, would we look at David and say, oh, you're too emotional?
Right.
The writer of, like, the hymn book, the Old Testament.
Love the Lord your God with all of your heart, soul, mind, and strength. That's literally every part of you. That includes your knowledge and your feeling, right? So, like, for us to say, well, we have to completely exclude feeling is saying, well, then it's love the Lord your God with all your soul, mind, and strength, right? We're skipping a part of it, or whichever way you want to choose those words, or to go to the other end and say, no, your knowledge doesn't matter, then we're, right? Like, Scripture clearly tells us it's with our whole being. He created our feelings. he created our mind. He created every part of us. And so we love him with all of it. And yeah, Lex, you're right. It is not bad to have things.
Right.
My heart's desire is where it becomes that idolatry
Yep.
that you were talking about, right? And so,
Which can lead to distraction, which could lead to misplaced worship, which can lead to apathy.
right. So you asked for some like,
So what?
what's the cure, right? What do we do?
How do we? Fix
Yeah.
this?
So
Prayer.
yeah, get on your knees and pray and ask God for that fresh fire again, right?
Mhm.
To fall in love with Jesus again. It starts
Is there a worship song?
a fresh wind. I need a fresh wind.
Yeah. Defamiliarize myself.
Yeah. So I think it starts there. And then like, you know, people are going to be like, well, of course you pray, man. Like that's the answer for everything, right? Yeah. So do it. Just do it, right? So then from that point, like that's where I start. Now there's other ways I can grow and develop a heart and a passion and a desire for God outside of just prayer. Prayer is where I start. Like that's the foundation. My personal relationship with him is the foundation. From there, I look to celebrate things, right? I think a lot of times in our culture, we like to complain about everything.
Right. Everyone's a critic.
Yeah. And I'm as guilty as anyone. Even this morning, I complained about stuff. So like, I need to take a step back and say, what can I celebrate?
Mm.
God, where are you? What are you doing? How can I celebrate you in the midst of this?
Mm-hmm.
Serve, right? Actually do something outside of yourself for someone else because of the love of Christ through you. Go and do, right? Like serve somewhere in your local church, in a local ministry, do something. Because as soon as I start to get out of my little comfortable little bubble and start to serve other people, my heart begins to change for them. Have gospel conversations. I think we've lost that as Christians. I know a lot of people who I've had conversations with, well, I'm just not an evangelist. I can't do that. The Bible says you can do that,
Mhm.
right? In fact, there's only those who are professional evangelists are allowed to share the gospel. It's go and share with everyone always, right? So like have those conversations, be more intentional with those. Find someone to hold you accountable to that type of stuff. Like there's so many steps we can do, and we hear these things over and over again. I just think we often forget them.
Yeah.
And man, if you want, and this is the next gen pastor in me coming out right now, but if you want a fresh heart for God, start to serve the next generation. Because when you see some of their excitement and their passion, because they haven't been doing this for 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 years, this is all new and fresh for them. It's contagious. Right? When you see a teenager whose heart is on fire for God and you have the opportunity to help grow that and fuel that, it grows and fuels it for yourself too. So like find a way where you can invest in the next generation, whether it's through your local church or a mentorship opportunity or your kids or your grandkids or your friends' kids, like whatever it might be. Yeah, find a way to be involved, because that, like, I can't just be like, I don't care. When I sit with a teenager and hear the hurt that they're experiencing and yet their desire to seek Christ in the midst of it, like I have to care. Otherwise, like you're dead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like there's no life in you.
And I mean, it could be as easy, we talk about the church being how it needs to be this multi-generational thing because of things like that, because everybody, no matter where they are, has something that they can add and contribute.
Right.
And they're different things. And so we all need each other. It's not, we just need young people, or we just need older people, or we just need middle-aged. Like, it's not that. It's that we all work together to form this cohesive thing where we can build up where there's weaknesses in other spots. Like we can fill those holes in. And so it can be as easy as like on Sunday morning, if you're at a church, like say hi to somebody and ask them how they're doing, who's not somebody you would normally talk to. Maybe somebody in a completely different, for lack of a better word, demographic than you. If you're older, find somebody young. If you're young, find somebody older. Like get outside your comfort zone, ask how somebody is, and then, and I think this is such a buzzword right now, and I almost hate to say it, but I think it matters. Be authentic with that. Right? Don't be, this is why that app Be Real is as popular as it is, right? Because I think in a world of apathy, people are craving authenticity. And so
for sure,
be authentic.
Yeah, actually listen and care about the response when you ask someone how they're doing.
And it might be uncomfortable for us, but like don't assume, check in on your people. And maybe we need to get back in the habit, both inside and outside of the church, of just texting and calling people and following up with people and noticing when people are kind of off, yes, it's easier to not care. Yes, it's easier to disengage. As an introvert, those are my statutes, right?
I'm on my wall.
Yeah. And live, laugh, love, right?
Don't care, isolate, cry.
Yeah, perfect. That's our mantra. No, but I think too, for those serving in the church, and maybe we could hit the angle of those who maybe don't yet know God and are tuning in. But Galatians 6:9 says, "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." So why would Paul write that? I think because the temptation is going to be there for those who are working in the harvest field, that we would want to give up because it's hard, and we are going to become weary and disillusioned. Does any of this even matter? Are they listening? Are they getting this? And that's an encouragement too for the church. There's so much in scripture that talks about hardened hearts and becoming dull of hearing. Are we showing up or tuning into a podcast or hanging out with a Christian friend? And maybe we have that mentor going on, and it's just falling on deaf ears. Yeah, I've been there, done that. I've heard this. Or I don't want to hear it from you. I already know this.
Yeah.
Again, taking it back to the start, God, defamiliarize myself with all of this. Yeah. Hit me anew with your truths and your beauty and who you are. And know too, if you are weary, you're not alone. Mm-hmm. This is hard work, but there is a beautiful harvest that's coming if we don't give up, and that these are just momentary afflictions. It's hard when we're in the midst of that for it to feel light and momentary, but we press on because of the glory that's coming, which is later in that scripture. So I hope there's some encouragement there for those who are working hard right now.
I'm reminded of Proverbs 29:18, where it says, "Where there is no vision, the people perish, or they cast off restraint." Mm-hmm. And I think that leads to our apathy, is because we've lost the vision of God, right?
Right.
Forget about your local church's vision or your business's vision or your family's mission statement, whatever it might be. If you want to get out of your apathy, rediscover God's mission and get on board with that, right? He gave us the Great Commission, Jesus did in Matthew 28, right? Go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them, right? And teaching them to obey everything that I've taught you. And guess what? I'll be with you the entire time. You're not going through this alone. Get on his mission. He'll guide you. He'll give you the resources you need. And yeah, like you said, Lex, if you don't yet know Jesus,
mm-hmm.
That's where it starts. If you're feeling apathetic towards just everything,
does anything matter,
Right. It won't matter until you know Jesus, because nothing matters outside of him and his purpose and his will for your life. And so we love to engage with you in that conversation. You can email us. You can
podcast@dfchurch.com.
There it is. And we love to engage with you. If you want a phone call, let us know. We'll call you, set up a video conversation, whatever's necessary, because nothing else matters outside of Christ and what he's done for you and knowing him, right? Literally nothing else matters. And so my heart is always going to have apathy apart from him.
I think part of that apathy too, this dovetails nicely. Maybe you're listening today and you're like, okay, well, Jesus is just one way. What about Muhammad? What about all the atheists? What about this? What about that? Investigate the claims. An apathetic person doesn't investigate the claims. Right. They just hear things, or they buy into the straw man arguments, and then you're left still with nothing. If Jesus is who he says he was, which was God, the very claim that got him killed, that deserves some, if not all, of our attention. He claimed to be God and was the only one of any of the major religious leaders to actually resurrect from the dead. They have never found the bones of Jesus. There is so much evidence that points to the truth of Christianity. So again, that dull of hearing, I want you to hear this. I want you to know. It's not about what we feel or believe about Jesus. It's who was he and what actually happened. So
I love that. Well, I think that's a good, unless you guys have anything else you want to put on the end of that conversation. Otherwise, I think that's a good.
I feel like we were very come on right at the end.
We're going to take the responsibility. Let's go.
Obviously, we could probably talk about these things for hours and hours, but I think that's a good kind of overview of what's going on. But again, you can email us, podcast@dfchurch.com. Let us know your thoughts. Do you see apathy in your own life? Do you see it in others around you? And what do you think is the cause and solution? Let us know. podcast@dfchurch.com. But along those lines, let's go into our Ask the AI Anything segment. I love this. It's one of my favorites. Remember, if you want to see what food we can make here at Discovery Fellowship Church based off an AI looking at a refrigerator, you can sponsor us for 1 month of ChatGPT 4 that is now integrated with DALL-E 3 apparently, and all sorts of crazy things. Just email podcast@dfchurch.com. We'll get you set up with sponsoring us for 1 month, $20. We'll sponsor you for a month. You get to pick a prompt, and hey, maybe now we'll make you a meal based off what's in our fridge. Whatever that's going to look like, email podcast@dfchurch.com. Let us know you'd like to sponsor us for a month.
Nobody wants a meal out of what we can make out of.
I was going to say, what can you make out of mustard and like Seder bones? I feel like
Oh yeah, bring the freezer in.
Seder bones. I think that Seder bones.
if there's something there.
People listening are like, "What the heck just happened?"
What is
are they
in that
talking
for
about right now?
So yeah, we've got some lamb bones in the freezer
Yeah,
that we use at the Seder, and we don't eat them. We don't lick them. Like they're just
we don't.
purely decorative. And so Matt just took out his
My contact just fell out. Yeah.
Holy cow. That's live as we're watching. That was exciting. Let's put it back in.
Well, while that's happening,
man,
I want to share with you guys real quick my take on AI. This is Nathan's favorite segment. If I haven't shared this before, or you didn't hear me say this before, here's my take.
Yeah, let's hear it.
God made us in his image. Man turns around and makes AI in his own image. What could go wrong?
What could go wrong?
What could go wrong?
Everything. So what you're saying is that AI is a gift from God.
This is becoming our shtick. All right, what do you have?
All right, so I asked it. Here's what I asked it this week. Don't peek at my screen.
Okay.
Alexis.
No peeking.
I asked it, what are the top 10 unusual distractions from spiritual growth?
Unusual.
Okay.
Distractions. And so it went up a little bit silly. All right, number 10. Divine diet distractions. Trying to find spiritual enlightenment at the bottom of a bag of chips or in the mystical realm of the refrigerator. Because who needs daily bread when there's chocolate?
And who knows what's in the refrigerator?
It goes back to the fridge again.
It's always
Was they on
What's the
listen?
Daniel fast?
That's creepy.
What is
Well,
that?
I just like who needs daily bread when there's chocolate.
Yeah, I thought it was gonna go with like all the diet fads that we
Yeah.
Yeah.
had scripture.
And we're like, this is godly and spiritual. I'm growing, but it's really vanity. Like, maybe.
All right, number 9. The holy home decor. Spending more time curating the perfect prayer corner with aesthetically pleasing candles and cushions.
Yeah,
Live, laugh, love.
never pray.
Pray
Yep.
in said corner.
Yeah.
That one's funny.
Or Instagramming your quiet time.
Yeah.
It's all about
People still do that.
it's the illusion of holiness that we're
Yes.
putting out when really there's no actual.
The sanitized
Yeah.
version.
Number 8, meditation misadventures. Attempting to meditate, but getting distracted by thoughts like, did I leave the stove on? Or what's for lunch?
All right, to be fair,
I've done that.
yeah.
Now, when we say meditating, I think people get like kind of weird about that. That's like the charismatic thing. But
Or like praying and fasting.
meditation is a biblical concept, right? It's not meditating in the Eastern sense of right to destroy rational thought, but it's spending time thinking on God.
Mhm.
Yeah. Number 7, sermon a lyricist. I don't know what that means. Turning every sermon into a potential hit single. Forget the message. It's all about finding that catchy hook in the pastor's words.
Okay, to be fair,
You
That
kinda
sounds
do that.
awesome.
you kind of do that as part of your job. Is you find those like TikTokable moments.
Yeah.
Well, that's true, but
Not a song, but
should I put them to like a beat?
Yes.
Can we put Pastor Rick to like a beat?
hey, you put someone else to a beat once.
I did. It was totally by accident. They put themselves to a beat, and it was
Without
And
even
you
knowing.
documented it.
Yep.
It was great.
All right, number 6, DIY worship workouts. Trying to combine physical fitness and spiritual growth by turning prayer time into a full-fledged aerobics routine. Praise squats, anyone?
So there's a lot of groups out there that actually do like working out and Bible study together. I think exercise is good. I think that's you being a good steward of your body. So I'm not against those two things, and that being like a cohort type of thing. Because there's accountability with both in your Bible study and your exercise, which I think is healthy and good.
Great.
As long as vanity is not mixed in.
Right, as long as it's not vanity, it's for health, right? Because I want to be healthy so I can be more effective in what I do and not just a lazy sluggard, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's the key.
When it's like, I have to look awesome, but I love Jesus. Like, no,
right.
I'll skip the praise squats.
All right, number 5 kind of hits on
No,
it.
we're bringing that to Discovery next year, guys. Christmas 2024. Let's go.
So excited. All right, number 5, theological treadmill. Reading every book on theology except the one you're supposed to be studying.
Hashtag the Bible.
Because, hey, who needs to understand the Bible when you can debate the intricacies of obscure theological debates?
Like time this morning, we had a conversation.
That one hits.
That hits you a little close to home. Well, okay, and again, I'm going to call out my brothers and sisters in Christ. Are you more concerned about how much you know than who you know? Right, that's the issue.
It's your TikTok moment.
Yeah, there's your TikTok moment for this podcast, right?
So, wait, I think you're right. And it's like, I think about this, especially lately, it seems like eschatology is coming up everywhere. Like, is this the end of the world? Is everything in Israel a sign of the end of the world? It's like, instead of spending so much time focusing on arguing what it's going to look like when Jesus comes back, let's be telling everybody about who Jesus is before he comes back.
Yeah.
Well, and a lot of the people I know who are concerned with that right now, it's that sense of urgency. Okay. It's not like focusing on the details. It's more.
But I think when it's like, oh, but this prophecy means that he's going to be coming back and his foot's going to touch down on the Mount of Olives here, and that leads to this rapture theory.
Right. Like, instead of me being like, oh, this might be the end.
Yeah.
My neighbor doesn't know Jesus yet.
Right.
Oh, this might be the end. Let's see if it actually is and look up all the little data.
Right. Number 4, hymn or hip hop.
The mocking.
Ooh, hymn or hip hop.
Hymn or hip hop. Getting so caught up deciding between a worship playlist and the latest pop hits that you end up doing neither, just humming in confusion.
That's the dumbest one, I think, so far. Yeah. Because we've had this conversation, right? Like, can music be Christian or secular?
Right.
All right.
That's another debate for another time.
This next one's great. Number 3, procrastination. Quote, I'll start my spiritual journey tomorrow. Spiritual growth takes a backseat to mastering the art of procrastination.
See,
how did he come up with the word procrastination?
AI is getting good.
Here's what I need to see. Is that already, has somebody said that?
It's on the internet. While you're looking that up, here's my thought about procrastination. If it's a good thing for you to do, why are you saying I'm going to start? Like, this is why New Year's resolutions, I'm like, if I know today that I need to get into God's word more and spend more time in prayer, why am I saying I'm going to wait till January 1st to start that?
I have a different take.
January 1st might never come, Alexis.
I know.
I should start now.
I get your logic and I appreciate it. I actually really like New Year's. It's like my second favorite holiday because I think there's something beautiful about a new start, and that is the gospel, that we're like given a new start.
But maybe you just start that new start today.
Well, you could, but there's something to be said for benchmarks.
Right. To give it like a concrete like moment to define it.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean,
guys,
hang on. Just Lamentations chapter 3. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. They're not new January 1st. They're new every single morning.
If you guys caught the finger. Yeah.
Whoa. January 1st. You're not sure. It's not that.
Not that finger.
So just 30 more seconds and we'll move on. I'm not against setting goals. In fact, every New Year, I do set some goals, right? But the people who I'm going to eat better, I'm going to exercise, I'm going to read the Bible more, I'm going to connect with friends more, don't wait until January 1st for that. Right. Start now.
It's May. And you're like, I'll get to that next year.
Right? No, I know people who in the summer start thinking through next year's resolutions. And I'm like, probably 6 months away.
Yeah.
Okay, I Googled
That's good. That's a good aside.
I Googled procrastination.
Yeah.
0 results.
It says, did you mean procrastinate?
AI has coined a new term that is not on a Google result. That actually kind of scares me more than anything else we've talked about. All right, number 2. Holy moly, social media. Spending more time crafting the perfect #blessed post than actually engaging in prayer. Bonus point for adding amen at the end of a well-crafted selfie.
I almost think we're getting past that, though.
I don't know.
I mean, was that 10 years ago?
I don't know, but this list, I'm actually kind of impressed. I think
this is pretty good.
Did they?
Yeah.
ChatGPT 3.5. So they must have upgraded the free one to 3.5 at some point recently, because that's nice.
So I'm wondering if on the social media one, it's less like what was the trend 5 to 10 years ago,
right.
All my quiet times, I'm posing everything to be perfect. And it's like the way I interpret that was, am I spending more time creating any social media posts than I am connecting with Jesus?
Yeah, or maybe like Christian influencers, where it's like their job
They still exist.
and their
Yeah.
identity.
Yep.
Maybe, I don't know. There's something to that.
That's so weird. Like Jesus is my Christian influencer.
Number one,
Number one. I'm ready.
Netflix devotion. Binge watching becomes a spiritual exercise, and suddenly, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's Netflix recommendations is a commandment.
What? Okay, I think they lost it on that one. Unless you're binging The Chosen, which The Chosen's on
It's a
Netflix.
distraction from spiritual growth. So spending so much time watching Netflix,
got it.
you're losing sight of who God is.
Got it. Well, all right. That's fair. Like consuming any
Type of streaming media.
consuming too much of anything
Yeah.
and not consuming enough God is a bad
That
thing.
top place of the heart we talked about.
So that was our top
That
10.
was fun.
Let's move briefly into our listener mail for this week. We got a letter from Jeremiah. Last week I had asked to send in what you were eating for lunch.
Yeah.
He understood the assignment. Nobody else did. So again, if you're watching this, listening right now, stop what you're doing. Please, I'm asking you right now, stop what you're doing.
Fix the Seder bones and mustard for lunch.
But just email me. What are you having for lunch today? I'd love to know.
Or breakfast or dinner.
breakfast, or
Depending on
whatever
what time you're
time
listening.
the nearest meal.
Yeah. What's the plan?
What's the plan?
It's
just give you an idea.
Fresh ideas for what to eat. He's sick of the peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
It's a true story. So Jeremiah said, I had Callies, which is caviar from a toothpaste tube.
Yep. And so tune in next time because we're actually going to try it. He sent us some caviar in a toothpaste tube that we were going to try on our podcast. And I'm going to have a trash can nearby.
I will not be here next week.
He said, I also want to call out or highlight the Gideon's ministry. So if you remember last week, we had our missionary on who works with Wycliffe. Wycliffe is a weird way to say it.
No, Wycliffe.
Wycliffe. Wycliffe. He's Wycliffe. That's how he said it.
Weird.
The whole time.
I thought it was Wycliffe.
I thought he said Wycliffe the whole time. Anyway,
What cliff?
Wycliffe
Sorry, that's bad.
highlights the Gideon's ministry, who places Bibles in schools, doctor's office, as well as hotels. Although I've seen less and less Gideon's Bibles in hotels. Hot take episode, especially given our most recent budget that proposes reduction in salaries. Why should we pay pastors? How much church work should happen if we double the paid staff or cut it by 50%? What level of apathy is caused by professionals do ministry versus creating tons of disciples to go out and do it?
Nice. That's a hot take. Yeah.
What do you guys think?
I think we can do a whole episode talking about church structure and leadership and pay versus volunteer and what that looks like.
All right.
I'll throw in real quick.
Yeah.
As a volunteer, I think if you're passionate about the work and God has called you to it, pay doesn't necessarily factor in. That could be an interesting episode.
That could be an interesting episode. There's a lot to talk about.
Yep.
Well, that's it for this week. Thanks again, Alexis, for joining us in this conversation. Thank you, Matt, for being here.
Always a pleasure.
Always. Next week, it is Thanksgiving week. So we're going to have a tweet episode coming out on Black Friday. And we're going to talk about materialism, consumerism, and what it means to actually be grateful in a time where our culture really wants to go again.
So while you're doing your online shopping or waiting in way too long of a line outside, listen to our podcast and feel convicted and walk away.
Just walk away.
Just walk away. All right. We'll see you guys next.
Bye, guys.
Bye.